Everybody, and welcome to Discussions in Orbit REXUS BEXUS Edition, our series of live interviews organized by Team DROPSTAR. If you're familiar with DROPSTAR, you know that our team participates in the REXUS BEXUS Programme, a German-Swedish student program where teams from all over Europe are selected to design, build, and execute an experiment in one of the two available platforms, BEXUS, which is a stratospheric balloon, or REXUS, which is a single-stage rocket. In Discussions in Orbit, REXUS BEXUS Edition, we interview fellow REXUS BEXUS teams in order for them to introduce their experiments to the public and share their experience in the program. So today's team is Boomerang.
Team Boomerang aims to demonstrate an autonomous return to launch site functionality of disc-shaped free-flying units that are used to perform electric field and plasma measurements in ionized space. By using an autonomous solution that returns the experiment after being ejected from a sounding rocket, resources and time will be saved as a manual retrieval procedure is now unnecessary. The expected results of the experiment will contribute to future technological developments of sounding rocket free-flying payloads for research in space plasma physics and other scientific fields. So let's now meet the team behind the experiment. Team Boomerang, welcome. If you could quickly introduce yourselves to the public.
Yes, hey, welcome everyone. And first of all, thank you very much for having us today. So, my name is Luca and I'm the outreach responsible for Boomerang. And with me I have...
I'm Marty, and I was the lead mechanical engineer for the first 2 years of the project.
Great, thank you very much for participating. And first of all, I have to apologize here for my voice as well. I'm a bit sick, so bear with me, everybody. And I will ask for you to begin by describing us the concept of your experiment.
First of all, we would like to thank you for the opportunity and the platform. I think this is like a great idea and the proposition that we are glad to participate. And then regarding the experiment, we have a long history of experiments from KTH that are used to measure magnetic field and plasma related properties of the upper atmosphere. Like behind the shoulder of Luca here, you can see that these probes that are ejected from the rocket have this birthday cake shape and size, and they spin. And with the spin, you can use the centrifugal force to deploy wire booms that are used to measure different properties, as I mentioned. And then our experiment aims to develop functionality exactly that, as you mentioned already, to return these FFUs to the launch site after they execute the measurement, which is not only good for reduction of the cost of the recovery efforts, but also can ensure like the science is kept, since all the data is recorded onto SD cards. If the FFU is not found, then there is no measurement to speak of, and then sort of everything went to waste. So our solution is to integrate a paraglider into the recovery unit, which is the top 1/3 of these units, and then deploy it after re-entry into the atmosphere, and then at 10 kilometers, and then glide back from the expected ballistic landing zone of the payload to near S range, where it can be retrieved, not necessarily by helicopter, but maybe even like some kind of snowmobile operation.
Yes, and another goal is that to have this solution as a modular thing. So our goal is to make it possible to insert this module into upcoming or another REXUS experiments later on as well.
Exactly, because we are not doing any plasma measurement, because that would be too much for scope of a single experiment. So a future team can maybe integrate a past measurement unit with our paraglider and then do these things at the same time.
Right, well, it does sound awfully interesting and quite complicated, if I may say so. And I mean, the REXUS timeline of the flight is a timeline where a bunch of stuff happens in a very short amount of time.
Exactly.
So could you describe us what your experiment timeline is and what will be happening during the flight?
Yes.
Yeah, so I can start.
Go ahead.
So yeah, after the launch, we want to eject the FFUs before this spin, which will happen, I think, T plus around 2 minutes, let's say.
Something like that.
Yes. And after that, uh, we want to have some time to perform the plasma measurements, which we won't do now, but just to count with it. And then we want to detumble the unit to avoid the entanglement of the paragliders. And after the detumbling phase, we want to deploy the paraglider.
Yeah, exactly. Just to add a little bit to this, so that we there is a, for those watching from home and not necessarily familiar with the REXUS timeline, the rocket is spin stabilized, and then there is a D-spin system on it for it to ensure like low levels of or like to ensure microgravity during the weightlessness part of the flight. And then we eject before this so that the spin of the rocket is kept on the FFUs, so that this spin that I mentioned before to deploy the wire boom is kept. And we are still, even though we don't have these devices on board, we still do this just to be as close to that flight setup as possible. And then so this is just a flat spin that this disk do. And then after the during and after re-entry into the atmosphere, there is an incredible amount of spin that these units pick up. Historically speaking, we have flight data of some previous flights where they like I don't have an explicit G value to mention here, but it's crazy how fast they start to spin up. And then we intend to like stop this before paraglider deployment because if we try to deploy the paraglider in this state, then for sure it would end up tangling the lines and then with an unsuccessful deployment. So that will happen. Like re-entry to the atmosphere happens around like T plus what is this, like 4 minutes or so. And then our intention is to return to the launch site in like an hour or 1.5 so that the airspace can be cleared as fast as possible and the recovery effort with the helicopter can begin for the rest of the payload.
Okay, before we move on to the next question, can I make like a quick question? Will you also
Sure.
be using a yo-yo system to de-spin, or what is your mechanism about that?
No, we're not using a yo-yo system because the yo-yo is used for a single axis spin, and we will pick up all three axes and also in atmosphere. So that wouldn't be as effective. But looks like what do you want to describe the
Yes, so we have a sub-team who works on developing a detumbling system for us, which consists of 4 fins. It so it looks like a badminton ball basically when it's
Oh,
deployed. So it will stabilize the fall, yeah, in all 3 axes.
well? It certainly stabilizes around 2, and then we are hoping for this third skill.
okay, so you do aerodynamic stabilization.
Exactly, because it's a passive system, so we are really relying on sort of this center of pressure above center of mass situation, as Lutza mentioned with the badminton thing. It looks like actually because of the proportions, we have a birthday cake and we have like these round things on top. When it opens, we would like it to look like a badminton ball, but it's really more like I don't know, something like what is that flower that grows on lakes?
Yes, Lily.
Lily pod. Yeah, so like it's like this
Oh.
flat flower. It's really suboptimal for what we are trying to do. So like you can imagine that will stabilize it around like not the symmetry axis, so it will still probably roll as it falls, and that's like a big question of what we can do about it because of the volume penalty. Like we are working with so small spaces that there is really no way to implement anything that is an active control for stabilizing this axis.
So we are talking about free flying units. So by definition, you're trying to predict the unpredictable when it comes to returning them to the launch site. And in your answers, we are hearing that, oh, we implemented that. I'm guessing that this came from experience, that you thought of the experiment, that you simulated it, and you're like, we need to add that as well. And what are those points, those difficulties that you had to face that led up to the experiment that you have now?
Yes, so basically what we use or where we are right now is that we use heritage, so experiences from previous REXUS teams, and we also started testing half a year back, I would say, for the detailing at least. So
Yeah.
right now we are doing
But then
balloon
was-
drop tests and car roof tests. So we are trying to build the knowledge we gain there.
Mhm.
Yes, and we are aiming for our plane drop test by the end of the summer, I would say, or beginning of
I think
the fall.
beginning of fall, exactly. And also there was depending on if you count that, but we had now we have glass fiber like these fins because they will be implemented that way. But before the winter, we had when was the winter testing? Was it in like November?
November, last
So
November.
we had like a week-long winter testing campaign here at KTH where we were lucky enough to have access to the wind tunnel for that long, and then we could measure all sorts of aerodynamic properties of this deployed system and just the FFU in general to determine sort of was the Reynolds number and then what will be the terminal velocities throughout re-entry and these kind of things. But at the I think what we realized from that it takes an enormous amount of work to implement those things into simulations or just even analytical calculations. So we are sort of moving on this way of just testing things as fast as possible, which is actually pretty difficult because these small fine mechanics parts are really not that easy to pump out new versions of serialized even with the CNC they have access to here. So I would say I think one of the biggest issues is this iteration is we can't do this as quickly as we would like to because as you said, like you have to build this knowledge base, and the only way to build it is to go ahead and see how it doesn't work. And like these iterations take a really long time for us. But I think it would take for anybody else, like this is not nobody's working here full time to take care of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the iterative process can be quite time consuming and resource consuming as well.
Exactly.
And yeah, I mean, it sounds like an experiment where you would need several hours. Like it's complex, right? You've got everything. Sounds like a lot of software. You need a lot of testing. You need a great
Exactly.
and many engineers and simulations. And can you tell us more about the team that runs all these things? Like it sounds like you need a lot of people to do that. Can you say a bit more about them?
And you will be surprised how few people can do so much.
Yes. Started with, I think, 6 members, but then we realized that we definitely need more, so we did a strong recruitment campaign last autumn.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we doubled the size, so right now we are around 14 people, but with very diverse backgrounds, I would say. So yeah, we have people's from aerospace backgrounds, and then mechanical people, and we have the electronics sub-team is mainly doing embedded systems or electromagnetics fusion and plasma physics. So yeah, everyone has very different background and experiences.
And I think you also end up doing a lot of things that you never thought you would have to. Like the great example is when you need people to do testing, and then we had a launcher actually, which was like this catapult slash ballista, like a really big crossbow essentially, to shoot the paraglider. And then it was we never got it to work, but then you need like at least 4 people to carry it out to somewhere and then have all the equipment, and then you sometimes have to get the software people. And then there is a great Instagram story hidden or somewhere kept on our page where our team leader at the time, who was very much into GNC and software, is like climbing a hillside with like a rope, like trying to get up, and like everything is falling off of his shoulders, and he just looked up and like, can't I go back to MATLAB? It's like, I think that's the quintessential experience of like, can't I just do the thing I came here to do? And it's like, no, you have to do. Everybody has to do everything.
That's not how
Yeah.
student teams work. You don't get to do what you want to do.
Exactly.
Well, I have to say, it sounds extremely fun. Like, if you need someone, just ring us a call. But yes,
Yeah.
I totally agree with what you say. Like, when you enter a student team, you have to do unexpected things. Like, you enter for software and somehow you do financial.
Yes, definitely.
Exactly. But I think the balloon drop test was sort of similar for us. But I like between us and however many people are watching, I never really believed that we will be able to get to an airfield and then have a balloon on a tether and then drop something from it for like 150 meters. And then it happened. And it was just crazy. Like I'm still, like I think back and it's like, how? Like, how did we end up here? Like, it's sort of hard to believe even now that it was done.
Yeah.
Yes, which is with all of these, we are able to experience them because of the REXUS program. And since now we have a new campaign for BEXUS, like a selection workshop will take place this fall, in case that anyone is considering it and it's watching us now, I would like for you to describe your experience in the REXUS program and perhaps convince them to take part.
Sure. But that's a small question. I can give a short answer to it. But for me, I feel like no one really knows what they sign up for, or maybe some people do, but I definitely didn't, even though it was explained in very plain text, and words of what this is about. But even someone else who was the first team leader of the team, I think when he started working on it, he said that he was doing his bachelor thesis as a glider sort of thing, like a preliminary design kind of part. And then he said that like he was writing his bachelor thesis for like 2 or 3 months when he realized that we are not building the rocket. We are only building one experiment on the rocket. I don't think I don't want to say I was never that lost because might not be true, but I feel like that you gradually like get to understand what you are doing. And I was lucky enough to participate in the launch campaign of B2D2 this March. And then I think a lot of things I only really understood when I was there and like looking at stuff, especially the safety and radio silence procedures regarding the experiment and then how much it can interfere with the booster, or like how much it should not or shall not interfere with the booster. Because you can look at the improved Orion in the REXUS manual and then you look it up online and you figure that it's the smallest thing that Moraba launches, from S range or whatever, and it like seems like this sort of small, cute thing to do on. But when you have to stand next to 400 kilograms of high explosive, that like really it hits different. Like really, really hits different. Of like like everybody like no one moves quickly. Just yeah.
And
I
what
didn't
about
speak
you,
for you, so
Ruth?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was very different, I would say, because I joined because of the community. So I had no previous knowledge regarding these kinds of experiments, really. But then, I mean, it it's been a great adventure and great experience because the stakes are not as high as doing it out there, like in industrial areas. It's still a student project. It's not bad if you fail or if you do a bad test, I would say.
Yeah.
So it's been a very fruitful 2 years almost.
Mm. Yeah.
So, overall, a fun and teaching experience, as you say.
Yes.
A lot of type 2 fun, if you're familiar. When you are really not enjoying it during, but it's very good to think back to. It was, I think Rexus Bex is a lot of that and a lot of type 1 fun too. But we definitely have like a great team and we have a lot of fun, but like when you have to put in the work, that's a little bit different.
Well, since we're already addressing the possible new members of a REXUS campaign, what advice would you give to somebody that's entering a REXUS campaign right now?
I would say for based on our experiments, the complexity of the experiment you want to have, it definitely worth thinking about it at least twice
Yes.
and just go for an easier.
Like, yeah, because we have like so like that's I think that's a very good point that the point of the program is to have a successful experiment, which is I think very much aligned with having a simple one, so that you can build a simple system and then make it space rated, and that's what makes it difficult or medium difficult. And if you have a complex system which you have to have sounding rocket rated, that makes it impossible. Or like that's what we mostly experience with ours. That is just sometimes it's just really impossible to work on. But I would sort of add to this specifically what Lucia mentioned is that you shouldn't reinvent the wheel, because in your job is to buy a bunch of things and build as few as possible to put together an experiment. If you want to do a scientific measurement, then you probably want to have an instrument that is built already. Because if you want to do your measurement and you want to build your instrument, then you end up like us, and you don't want to be like us. Like, it's very hard to like make custom things, and I think a lot of people don't realize this of how expensive it is to build custom screws or stupid stuff like this.
Yeah, there was a point when someone came up with the idea of making our springs in-house.
Yes,
I
and it's
remember.
like no, because students don't like I think don't have this mentality where you have to think of your work as cost. Like if you make a custom spring that takes 3 hours, then it's like a 40 euro spring, or depending on what you would like to imagine as your wage. But that spring that will be the most expensive part of the experiment, and if you have to make 8 of them, that's just horrible. Like you shouldn't do these things. And what I wanted to add something else too, but
Sorry.
you had such a good point that I sort of lost track of it.
Yeah, but maybe you can.
No, that what would be the advice for new student teams? Like read the manual in the first 2 weeks of you starting to work on the experiment. Like I think it's not a long thing. It won't make a lot of sense, but it will gradually like hit you of like, oh, I remember that there was something about this and I can look it up. Because then I don't know if you guys remember that moment at CDR, and I don't want to name anyone specifically, but then there was this realization that on a certain racket, the amount of power used is like 3 times the available power, because seemingly no one checked what was in the manual of like how much is available. And that was I died inside when that happened. Like how did we end up there? Like how many months? Like 8 months deep into the program, and then no one figured that you can't have 90 watts drawn on the service module. Like and so that's I think, and if you read this, you don't have to remember the number. You just have to remember that there was a limit, so that we should check. Like we wrote this limit in the SCD. Wait, is this wattage in accordance with what we have? And then you can check, and you realize that like, okay, it's not. Then we have to figure something out immediately to change it. Or I think if when you are reading it, especially in the beginning, it won't feel useful, but it will give you a lot of advantage along the way. That's why. This is
like
my frame point.
So many things to read or so much information to soak as soon as you're entering the campaign, where something just flies out of your head.
Yes.
No,
it's really overwhelming. There is just no nice way around it, really.
Yeah. Yes, and then you have the SCD and you pick each comma of the SCDs like, this is useful to me now, I understand.
Yeah. Exactly.
Great. So I have to. It's already time to finish the interview. Like this went so soon.
Wow.
It was, time flies when you are having fun.
Yes.
Like sounding like it.
It was a very interesting answers, and it's kind of a custom until now. But I like to finish the interview with the question of what will be your experiment's contribution.
So, I mean, if we successfully manage to control the paraglider back to the launch site, that's really one of its kind. And if it's a modular solution, that it will save so much effort and money and time and also like data loss for the upcoming experiments, maybe not only for KTH, but for other projects as well. So I think that's our main goal or ideal future that we really want to achieve.
Exactly. I can be a little bit more specific, other than the fact that this can be used if see, because this platform has launched several times inside the REXUS BEXUS, so it can be put onto any future experiments, but also it has flown outside of REXUS BEXUS on the Swedish sounding rocket national program that is funded by Rymdstyrelsen. And there's a future rocket coming up called Sister that will fly these FFUs. And if this is successful, there is there is a significant chance that this will fly commercially on that module. That's commercially, I mean, it's a research rocket from KTH, but it's it's like one level above seriousness than this Sweden project, I would say, where you have not just one module, but I think several of these, and it's like really goes higher and so on. So hopefully that will be our contribution if it works.
So, an exciting future for Boomerang, and
Indeed, yeah.
we wish you all the best. We hope that everything goes well. And we want to thank you for participating in Discussions in Orbit. Thank you for being here to be interviewed by DROPSTAR. And Dimitris, your classic line.
I mean, see you on the rocket.
See you on the rocket.
Exactly, because we will be on the same one. So we hope it goes well for you too, because otherwise we're gonna be in trouble.
Yeah, we certainly hope so.
Great.
Good luck, guys, and see you at Lunch Campaign, hopefully.
Yes, and thank you very much for organizing this event, really.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Bye.
You too.
You
Bye.
too.